I'm calling this meeting to order. Board Secretary, please take the roll.
Trustee Lee Reader,
Present.
Gilbert, absent, Abdus,
Here.
Thames,
Here.
Hill, absent, Perez,
Present.
Smith, absent.
Okay, on to the approval of the agenda.
Staff does have a recommendation to take items out of order from the agenda. Item 6.1 to the front of the agenda ahead of informational items and consent calendar, as well as items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, the closed session items to occur prior to consent. So 6.1 followed by 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and then back to informational items. Yeah.
What about 6.2?
6.2 we'll do after consent as well.
Okay.
So just moving 6.1, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. Yeah.
So,
Then we'll take the remaining in order.
all right. Well, since Eva's on her way over, and I'm certainly interested in her participation in 6.1. I mean,
That's the next item after the pledge.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or we could just go through consent if that'll give us some more
Do you want to
time.
do 6.2 right now? Okay.
All right. Let's,
Do you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Well, we need to approve the agenda.
Can I get a motion?
What's the order again?
Oh my God. Okay.
6.2, 6.1 followed by closed session, then back to regular.
okay. So
Just the amendments staff recommended. Okay. I have a second at first. I'll second. All those in favor say aye. The approval.
Aye.
All those opposed. The agenda is approved. On to the Pledge of Allegiance.
all right. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any conflict of interest?
I have a conflict on closed session item related to Airport South, which is item 8.2. I will be recusing myself from that item.
Okay. Recuse. Okay. On to presentations.
No presentations for today,
Any public comment?
not received prior to the meeting.
Okay. We're on to 6. Let's do 6.2.
Good morning, members of the board. Good to see you this morning. As those of you who were here last month learned, RD 1000 received a communication from Reclamation District 537 that it was interested in purchasing a piece of property that RD 1000 owns with RD 900 in West Sacramento area. Downey Brand is general counsel to both 537 and 1000 and therefore is precluded from providing any advice to the board on this matter. I inquired of the board whether you were interested in potentially approving a conflict waiver, and you indicated that you were and wanted me to bring it forward. We've already gone to RD 537 and asked if they would waive the conflict, and they have agreed they will waive the conflict. And in fact, we, Downey Brand, would not represent 537 at all on this particular issue. So Downey Brand would only represent RD 1000 in this issue. In addition, because Rebecca is general counsel for 537, I would represent RD 1000 in this issue to create complete separation between Rebecca's work for 537 and my work for 1000. So we presented to Kevin a copy of a conflict waiver that would allow us to advise the board should you have questions regarding this property. And we would ask for you to consider a conflict waiver. If you choose not to grant it, your alternative would be to find a backup special counsel, and I can provide names to you if you wish.
Thanks, Scott. That was pretty pro forma, I would say. So I would move approval of item 6.2.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Scott, you're it. Okay, on to item 6.1.
Black, just like that. Thanks. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, so item 6.1 is a proposed resolution to provide an installment purchase agreement with River City Bank for the acquisition cost of the Northgate property. John, guys, is with Stradling Long. He was our special counsel recommended, or is our special counsel for the financing portion of this as recommended by Downey Brand. And so John and I have been working pretty much daily to put the items in front of you. And so I'll just go through, and I do have a replacement agenda item based on some revised information we received from the bank that just kind of qualifies that things are still in draft form, that there's requirement for, underwriting and approval first, so they want to make sure that the red text is what's updated from what was provided to you on Tuesday. So to go through kind of how we got to this point, provided a summary in the staff report. Essentially, the purchase and sales agreement was authorized and executed on June 16th by the board after we finished closed session negotiations with the Jennies and settled on a price. So that was to open up escrow. We did ask for a 90-day escrow so that we could put together the financing plan as directed by the board as well, as opposed to spending down district cash and reserves, right? To preserve cash on hand. And so escrow's going well. We went through the preliminary title report. We completed the phase 1 inspection with no further recommendation for continued investigation on any items, and also completed the commercial structural building inspection. There's one AC unit that's in disrepair on the roof, but nothing major. So that is going through escrow. We are planning to close planning to close escrow on September 15th at the end of the 90 days. The tenant relocation, we've been working with Scott McElhern with Downey Brand to work with the tenant and the tenant's legal counsel and with Monument to have the tenant relocate. So the total that we came down from, the 1.4 that we thought kind of initially back in February or March, we've been able to reduce that total cost to about 1.1 million, which includes the $900,000 for the actual relocation and the offer that we've made pertaining to realty, the improvements to realty. So we've made that offer to the tenant of the 109 is filled out. We're waiting to hear back from their counsel whether they accept that amount or not. So that'll probably close, or a claim for that will be settled beyond the close of escrow for this transaction. In totaling up those costs, initially we had asked River City Bank in the resolution that's attached to the staff report is for $4.6 million. So River City Bank wanted to make sure up to 4.6. River City Bank, with our final closing costs, asked last week, what the close of escrow and taxes to finish the escrow transaction, and that enumerated to 4.3 million. So the approval is up to 4.6 if we need it, but they'll probably limit it to 4.3 that we take in. I did ask the bank late last week if they were willing to extend that up to include the relocation costs, and they were willing to do that up to 5.4 million. So there's two options at the end that I'd like the board to consider: either the 4.6 that was provided in the packet, or the larger amount of 5.4 to include the relocation costs, so we don't come out of cash reserves for that. So
Cash on hand right now.
So amongst all the accounts in the treasurer's report, we have enough in our capital reserve to fund the close of escrow. So
What's the dollar amount?
But it's actually behind a month because the accountant closed it out June.
I want to make sure we're math.
The money market says, as of end of July, it says 5.6 million.
So just to get this straight, those are the only two options to finance this, this purchase.
Well, I'll let John speak to the rest of the conditions on why the installment purchase agreement is the appropriate mechanism and really one of our only options to finance the acquisition of the property as opposed to a standard commercial loan. Because we can't secure the loan as a public agency with a lending institution or financing institution because they can't lien the property against the public agency. So that kind of throws like a normal, commercial loan out the window. Then other options, if we had a bond rating and we issued out municipal bonds or some other financing longer time frame that didn't fit into our time frame for since the board asked to go look at financing to the close of the negotiations. So those options that may have been available pretty much limited down to the installment purchase agreement. And there's a lot of benefits for doing it. So John, if you want to jump in here.
Sure. So the installment purchase agreement is a financing mechanism. It's used throughout the state for special districts and other entities. As noted, in light of the schedule that there is for the escrow, it provided kind of an efficient means to allow for River City Bank to provide the funding for purposes of the acquisition. Aside from the issue that Kevin mentioned with respect to why kind of like what would one think of kind of like a traditional bank loan and kind of the lien features of that is unavailable to public agencies. The other reason why the borrowing financing would take the form of installment purchase agreement, because within the Districts Enabling Act, as well as the Reclamation District Act, there are certain requirements to deliver, a bond or a security instrument that would obligate the district to go out and have voter approval. Through the installment purchase agreement mechanism, the district's able to utilize its power to contract and acquire property to enter into an agreement with River City Bank, to finance the project over time. So those are kind of, the benefits of this, kind of the typical nature of it and the familiarity of it with kind of lenders in the governmental space, as well as kind of how it fits in within the time frame for purposes of the acquisition and the closing of escrow.
John, hi, it's Eva. We spoke the other day on the phone, and it's like, bring this up. So the typical loan encumbers that property, but the bank can only go after that property clearly. But what this is, security is our cash flows. And so we have a debt service coverage test, and so we've encumbered our cash flows. So my question was, since we know this is step A of a multi-step bigger project and we're gonna need to refinance that, what's gonna happen, 12 months from now when we've got plans and we're ready to go on the bigger project? So John just pointed out to me, there's a provision in here where they kind of bifurcate the cash flows that are encumbered are the cash flows that meet that debt service coverage test. So if we have other cash flows, those can be pledged to another loan, but if we need a bigger loan, we pay a prepayment penalty to wipe this one out.
One mild clarification. The revenues that are pledged, it's not necessarily a bifurcation. There is in section 5.3 a provision whereby you could issue parity debt, assuming that certain coverage ratios are met. So you'd be able to have this, kind of smaller loan outstanding. Then if you have financing needs, assuming you're kind of hitting these marks, which under your rate covenant, you'll be kind of having 110 coverage anyway. You should be able, you should be able to, issue debt that's on parity and get the advantages of the rating that would be commensurate with having parity debt without having to take a subordinate position. So there is, this loan, assuming you're able to meet the requirements of 5.3, will not prohibit, future borrowing on the same lien level.
So the other borrowing wouldn't necessarily be a second mortgage. It's just at the first tranche of our cash flows. are committed to this loan.
So you was pointing out the bigger loan, can we talk about that a little bit, provide some context there?
Yeah, so the prepayment penalties is a tiered step in the first year. In the terms of a 5% prepayment, 4%, 3%, 2%, all the way down. I believe after the 5th year, it's a 0 prepayment penalty. The timing of the larger construction work or larger debt issuance to finish out the build, we probably have 12 to 18 months to finalize design. Now, if this goes through, that we have the site application to do it, start CEQA process. And so most likely we're looking at least through year 2. So it would be at year 3 at a lower prepayment. We also included that River City may waive the prepayment penalty down the road. So if we do, instead of doing a larger debt issuance or a bond obligation, if we decided to go with River City Bank, that would be a negotiating point we would make with them for the larger amount. And so that this would be paid off without prepayment and be part of it. They may, so that'd be a negotiating.
I was hoping that it would say that if we use River City Bank for further finance to refinance the bigger project, that this would go away, and they only stuck with language that says they may, so.
Was that question asked of River City?
No, I didn't talk to them.
Oh, okay.
John, we asked about that point, and I did ask them to change the prepayment penalties in the first years to maybe even out to 333, and they were unwilling to do that.
Change it from a may to shall.
So if we refinance and that's for finance, I guess, or need through River City Bank, they would not consider waiving the prepayment penalty on this loan.
They may consider it. So that would be part of the other negotiation is we have other options if they want it or not, then.
So prepayment penalty, so we have 2 options. One is to borrow a little more to pay for all this other extra cost. And by the way, the total cost is not 5.3 because we don't have the bank closing costs in here. So isn't there enough interest out in the cost?
The bank, so the bank closing costs in the exhibits here, correct. It's not on the summary sheet here, and that's why we asked them for 5.4 instead of the 5.3. So there's still room of the estimated finance of $20,000.
No, but on the third, you said we had 2 options. We could borrow the 4.3, or we could borrow an amount that paid us that allowed us to borrow against the tenant relocation and all that. But the total cost is not 5.3 because we haven't counted the closing cost of the loan in here.
Oh,
So hold on. So the substitute resolution, we've included up to 5.4.
And that includes.
That would include the closing
closing
costs.
So the closing costs are only $20,000.
On exhibit A, the finance charge of the agreement is $20,000 estimated.
That sounds like a cheap loan.
what's the total cost? Where's the interest?
Hold on.
Oh, let's see.
The 5.4 includes the closing cost.
We would include that in the amount that we received from River City Bank.
I thought don't they usually charge us like a 1% fee? Let me go back to the LOI if I can find it. I think the bank charged us a loan origination fee.
John, do you know the answer to that question?
No, I don't know if they're charging a loan origination fee.
Do you have the LOI handy?
The term sheet?
Yeah.
I don't have the original term sheet unless it's included. in that.
I think the.
I do remember seeing a 1% on there. On
I
the,
think
on
that's
the.
included in the 4.3 number. The 4.3 is what we're paying the
So we should,
sellers,
we should
right?
have to get.
Correct, but if the original resolution, option 1 in the board packet is up to 4.6 million. So we would include the closing costs and the bank fee in the amount when we give it to them would be the close of escrow plus their fees, plus that same 20,000.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So there's another $300,000 of cost if you're trying to be totally square with what is the total cost to us to buy this property? It's gonna be the 4.3 plus the relocation and all that, plus the 300,000 closing cost, right? When we went from 4.3 to 4.6, that money is gonna be tied to escrow, bank fees,
That is included in the four, aside from the bank fees for this agreement, depending on if the board approves it. That property to settle for escrow is 4.3. Then if the bank offered, if we needed more, so that's why they offered the 4.6. So if there were other eligible costs, i.e. their bank fees, we could include that in.
Okay, so 300 was what, just an arbitrary number, just to include. What is the 300,000?
I still don't know where that's
I
coming.
think that's the 1% that comes from the origin rate, because that was in the time to the pay sheet too.
Not included in what we understand that the bank fees are $20,000.
I think we should just go back and look at that, okay?
Sir, apologies, I was able to pull open the proposal, or at least the one I have, and for purposes of the loan fee, it's identified as none.
None?
That's what it says in the one that I have.
Okay, so when you said they would go up to 4.6, I was assuming that included the bank loan fees.
They just offered that in case at the time of the term sheet and when they started working on it, we didn't know what the close would be for escrow. Now that we,
Estimate of potential.
That's right.
additional-
Okay, thank you. John, could you look up, do we have to put some money in reserve at closing? Maybe that's what they were talking about. 4.3 and 4.6.
No, there's no reserve fund requirement in this loan.
Okay.
so even just real quick, that when working with Michael Bloss at River City Bank, we knew the purchase price that we were negotiating with the Jennings at the time. And to get him going on it, we kind of rounded up with escrow. I asked them to provide at least 4.6 million in funding. And then last Friday, after we rolled up the relocation, because we got the final claim and the tenant moved out, I then further asked if there was an allowance for, if the board was interested to include those instead of spending cash down.
All right.
He did get back to me, and on the good faith estimate, I think is important between the two, the original and what I provided this morning. So on the handout that I gave you, if we want to go, I'm sorry, it's the replacement resolution that I just passed out. If you go to the last page, the good faith estimate includes up to 5.4 million. The interest changed by 5 basis points. So if the 4.6, they locked us in at 4.035. And so the spread is what they used, and that's applied to tax exempt status. So because we are going to be a tax exempt, that's the rate.
So 4.035 is the rate?
On the 4.6 million, yeah,
And then on the 5.4?
is 4.355.
Okay, and there's no spread attached to that?
That's the rate, because the spread is usually depending on because it's tax exempt, usually the spread is the difference in tax code or the market at the time. So that would be the rate.
Okay.
And then the bottom on point D, the total estimated cost of this would be 6.7 million, right? After all the P&I payments and all of that, as opposed to taking the 4.6, let me just flip to that good faith estimate from them, would be 5.8. And that's over a 10-year term for both.
So this is pretty close to the SOFR rate, if that's their all-in rate. So I don't know. They're basically tying it to what bond rates are, and that's hard to tell because they, move every day, but this is pretty close to what, if you written out and got a regular bank loan, they would take SOFR plus something, so it's not a bad rate. That's what, the short-term overnight funding rates, if you went to.
I do want to point out one other thing with this rate and with our investment strategy now, if we go back to the investment report in 5.5, it in our money market account, in LAIF, in California class, we're currently, and this could change, right? But currently between 4 and 5% return in a given month. There's other things that we can do cash flow wise that, you know, if we want to help offset some of this cost is when the market's correct, we can invest in CDs. And with a step or a ladder program, we talked about this before with the bank doing some investment stuff, that you can have an off ramp every month. So the maturity of those CDs could come off, but it would lock in kind of larger portions of cash for us if we wanted to. But the rates are comparable for this interest rate with what we're getting in the market right now. So what's that?
CDs are not performing well.
Yeah, and that's the timing of it. If they were, we have that option down the road to help.
Okay, so at the end of July, the operations and maintenance cash flow had 6.3 in it. So this one. So if we didn't take the loan, we would be pretty much
For sure.
taking most of that money.
We would, we do anticipate our first installment from tax collection would come back in December. We received the first December or January from the new tax year, and then we get the second one. So it would bring down, if we decided not to do some pay cash, it would bring the operating reserve down to $1 million.
I would rather lump the relocation cost into the loan, just because we need to get so much more done after this.
Yeah, and the only thing I was gonna point out, if we bump the relocation cost into the loan, then we push the time out that we need to refinance the bigger project because we're not gobbling up our.
Yes.
So in other words, we will use our cash then to do the engineering and all of that. So that it pushes that relocation down to probably, I mean, the prepayment penalty down to probably the rate that's at year 3. Because we stretched out the time before we need more money.
That's, yeah.
And I asked them to do that based on our conversation a week and a half ago or something about, you know, the executive meeting about preserving cash to do like the closeout. So it's a good point that we can maintain that cash to do the engineering work.
I just talking about what you said.
So
Sorry.
how much are we paying how much are we paying the seller for rent on a monthly basis on behalf of the tenant that left?
$10,000, and that's triple net.
So 10,000 plus expenses. Or is it 10,000?
That's in total.
Okay. So,
And that's through the close of escrow.
okay. All right.
Because then we bottom out the full cost of bottom for the remainder. That was part of the 4.3 offer.
And if I can get this done, time for us at 2:15 close.
In conversations with River City Bank, John and I have a little bit to do depending on the resolution that the board adopts. And it sounds like the substitute one provided this morning of the 5.4 amount. John, I have a couple things to talk, a couple covenants that were issued to us this week from River City Bank that are most commonly with a leasing arrangement, which John and I feel aren't appropriate. So we need to just clear that off in the agreement. And then the bank does intend to complete underwriting next week and hopefully close the following, depending on our time frame and our signatures to them. We have to fill out some account codes and set up some internal accounting through our system so that we have a tracking number in our revenue side and in our expenditure side. The bank wants to see in that, so we just have to give them an account code. Jillian, Rob, and I will work on establishing that to put into the agreement. I did have a really good conversation with Michael Bloss from River City Bank and one of the underwriters from the team, that's their senior underwriter. On Tuesday night, they sent us a 4-page questionnaire to understand some things. So, and asked to do a call. So I spent about an hour with them. They feel really comfortable at this point. There's only about 3 or 4 deliverables that they want to see. They want to learn more about our OPEB trust for annuitant healthcare. So I want to just provide them those actuarials. They're due back with that request either this afternoon or early next week. And the short answer is yes, they feel that we could close prior to the close of escrow.
And John, were you able to get them to back off on some of those representations of borrower? You know, where it basically said, okay, all of our system is in good working order and that sort of thing. Were you able to explain that some of these?
Yeah, we qualified it in, connection with kind of good, operation, good industry standard. And we received no pushback on that modification. So, I think we're okay there.
And that was also a question one of the underwriter had yesterday on the call.
Yeah.
And I explained, it's like kind of, you have a car loan, your tire blows out, if we have a pump go down, in general, the system's running, but we could have intermittent interruptions. And he's like, oh, I totally get that. I understand. So underwriter knew that as well.
As long as we do that in writing, so that
Yeah.
there's not any kind of a gotcha there. Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna open up to comments from the public. Anything, Scott? Okay, can I get a motion for approval of a loan, perhaps for 5.4?
I'll make a motion.
Motion. Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you. John, thank you. You could stick around for the rest of the meeting if you'd like, but I'm sure you've had enough of me the past 2 weeks. So I'll follow up with you probably around 11 o'clock
Okay.
after the board meeting if you have time. Otherwise, later this afternoon. So,
So yeah, feel free to give me a call.
all right. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, closed session.
Madam Chair, before we do that, it just struck me,
Mhm.
if the board doesn't have questions on consent, it might make sense to do it because Paul's here just to support items 5, 6, 5, 7, 5, 8. If there are questions, then maybe we jump to closed session, but I thought it was at least worth seeing if the board had questions. So Paul doesn't have to.
Let
sit
us liberate
outside.
him.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I actually had the question. I was gonna make a snarky remark. What's Paul doing here? But I guess you answered that.
The other reason we wanted to do closed session, we didn't know how much time this discussion was going to take and then your time commitment. So
Okay, can I get a
I'll
motion?
move consent.
I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, consent calendar's approved. Goodbye, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Enjoy your free life.
Graphic done anyway.
Okay, on the desk.
let me pause. We're going into closed session now.
Mhm.
Okay, let me pause the recording.
Okay, so we've come out of closed session on the Brockman security item. Nothing to report. On the potential litigation, the board declined to take any action. And on public employee employment, there's no report. We're gonna continue that item to the next meeting in September when we have 2 additional board members to try to bring it to a close. So that's the end of closed session. And I think the only thing left are the reports, and I think we're about to lose a quorum.
So real quick, Scott,
Yeah.
please let the record reflect that I recuse
Oh,
myself
yes.
from the discussion on Airport South.
Yeah, you stepped out for the entire conversation, stepped in afterwards, and also that Director Hill left about 10 minutes ago during the closed session because she had another obligation.
Okay.
So you have to hit the gavel.
Motion adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, thanks all.
Thanks.
See you.